In this video, we are going to talk about if statements in Excel. So first of all, I'm going to just start off by explaining what if statements are, and then we'll look at a few different examples, one where we work with numbers, another where we work with text, and then a third where we combine some calculations with our if statements. So starting off to talk about what if statements are. So if statements are something that you use in Excel to check a particular value. So we could want to check, for example, if a grade is more than 40, and if that is the case, the student should pass, and if not, the student should fail. So we're aiming in Excel to tell our if statements three different things. The logical test, which is this first part, and like I said, that's checking whether a certain condition is true or not. Then a value if true, and that's what should happen if it is true. And value if false, what happens if it's false. So we'll see a few examples next. So first of all, an example where we are checking a number. So in this case, we want to check if a grade is greater than 40. You can see how that looks in the formula itself down here. Okay, so it's in this case, we're checking the value in cell A1. But you could obviously replace that with any other cell reference. And we're checking if it's greater than or equal to 40. Here you can use any combination of the math operators, less than, greater than, equal to, and just equals on its own as well. And then a number, so in this case it's 40. A couple of other things to point out about the if statement are that it starts with an equals, so same as all our other formulas, it'll start with an equals, then an if, then an open bracket, and within that open bracket then we have our three different things that we need to tell it. Those are separated by commas. So like I said, first of all, a logical test, and in this case, checking if a grade is greater than or equal to 40. Next then, a value if true. So what happens if the grade is greater than 40? And in this case, if it is, we want the cell to say pass. And lastly then, if it's not true, so if the grade is not greater than or equal to 40, we want to just display the word fail instead. We'll try this out in Excel in a second, but first just to look at a couple of other examples and just to show you that you can check for text as well as numbers. So sometimes we want to use numbers, but sometimes we might want to do just something like this to check if A1 has the word yes in it. In this case, when we're talking about words instead of numbers, we're going to enclose them in quotation marks. So you can see there I have the word yes enclosed in quotation marks. So we're checking if cell A1 has the value yes in it, and if it does, our result will say eligible, and if it doesn't, if it says anything other than yes, our result will say not eligible. So you can imagine this one being used maybe somewhere where we want to just check if, let's say, a student has passed maths, and if it's a yes, then they're eligible to study computing, for example. And if it's anything else other than yes, then they're not eligible. Okay, and the third example, and again, we're going to try all these out in Excel in a second, is just to show you how you can combine calculations in with your if statements. So in this case, we are checking for a number again. So we're checking if A1 has a value in it that's greater than 1,000. So in this case, we're checking an amount that a customer has spent. And if they have spent over 1,000, we want to give them a 10% discount. So what we're going to do in that case is multiply the amount they've spent, which is in cell A1, by 10%. And you use your asterisk for multiplication, and you can just type 10%. You could also type 0.1, but 10% will work just as well. So that's what happens if they have spent over 1,000, and if they haven't, lastly, it's going to do this instead, which is just calculate 5% discount. Okay, so to get started then, you can open up your practice file. It's just underneath the video. Okay, then open the zip file and open the Excel spreadsheet within it. You will also need to click Enable Editing, and then lastly save that into your OneDrive. Change the name of it here. Okay, so we're set up then and kind of ready to give this a go. So the first one that we are going to do is check some numbers. Okay, so here you can see we have some student grades. So we have some grades for these different students in English, Maths and Irish. So we are going to type an if statement into this cell here to check the grade for this person's English results first of all. So this is the number that I want to check. I want to check if it's greater than or equal to 40. So similar to the example we saw. And so you're going to type in equals and if and open a round bracket. And then you can see here that Excel gives you a hint about what you're supposed to type next. So it kind of tries to help you out with what you need to put in here. So there's the logical test, first of all, that's the thing we're checking. Then there's the value if true, what happens if it's true, and lastly the value if false, which is what happens if it's false. So in this case, we are checking if this grade is greater than or equal to 40. So you can type that in next and then put a comma. And if it is true, then we want to display the word pass. So we'll put that in quotation marks. Just a reminder, anytime you're using text, it goes in quotation marks. Another comma, and then what happens if the grade isn't greater than or equal to 40, we want to display the word fail instead. Okay, so that says pass for this one. You might remember from when we worked on formulas last week that there's a nice easy way to copy your formulas from one place to another. So to do that, we can basically click here in this green dot in the corner and drag that all the way down. Let me just zoom out there. So you can copy that formula down, and what we should see then is anywhere that the result is less than 40. So say like for this guy here, it's showing fail instead of pass, and the same for the next one, and so on. Okay, and also you can fill or copy that across the way as well. So you don't have to type that if formula out more than once, thankfully. So you can click and drag across, and you can actually do the whole way down for both columns in one go if you want. So click on the green dot again and drag all the way down. So we should see a kind of a grid of results then that correspond to these numbers over here, and wherever there's a number less than 40, we should get the word fail. Okay. So hopefully everyone got on okay with that one. If you do have any questions, let me know and I'll come over to you. The next example we're going to look at is an example of where we're checking some text instead. So in this case, we want to check if the student has passed maths, and it's just a yes or no thing that we're checking. And if they have passed, we should have the result say eligible, and if not, then not eligible. So once again, you're going to type in an equals first, then the word if, open a bracket, click on the cell that you want to check. So that's this one. And in this case, we're just talking about words. So with words, it's pretty much always going to be equals. So it's just if B3 equals, and then yes in quotation marks. So that's going to check if the word yes is in the cell. And then we'll put a comma in next, and then another quotation mark. And what we wanted to say, if the cell does say yes, which is eligible in this case, then another comma, and then not eligible in quotation marks. So again, if the cell says yes, we should get this result, eligible. And if the cell says anything other than yes, it could be no or it could be anything else. It will say not eligible instead. Okay, and once again, then you can copy that formula down to your other cells. Okay. And the last example then, we are going to have a look at this where, let me just zoom in on this a little bit more. We're going to have a look at course fees. So in this case, if the student's fees are more than 3,000, we want to give them a 15% discount. If they are anything else less than 3,000, then we're just going to say a 0 discount instead. So once again here, start typing in equals if and your open bracket. Click on the cell you want to check, so that's this one. And we want to check if it's greater than or equal to 3,000. If so, then we're going to multiply the amount of the fees by 15%. So you can once again click on B3 there, and then put in your asterisk for multiplication and 15%, then another comma, and then a 0. So in this case, if the amount of the fees are greater than 3,000, it's going to do this calculation. And if they're not greater than 3,000, it's just going to put a 0 in the cell instead. Okay, so I should see for this first one that it's a 0, which makes sense because that is less than 3,000. But when I copy it down to the other cells, I should see some different results. So yeah, wherever I have a value more than 3,000, it's done the calculation, which is what we wanted. Lastly, I suppose, because these are also currency amounts, you might just format those as currency as well. Actually, I'll use Format Painter. A reminder of Format Painter, it's this little paintbrush option up here. So click one of the cells that has the currency on it, and then you can click and drag the whole way down just to copy the formatting to there.